We are ready.
Can you hear us okay? All right. Good evening, everyone. We're going to call to order the special meeting of the Superior Town Council. And I'm going to do the roll call. Councilmember Aguilar.
Here.
Councilmember Armitage.
Here.
Councilmember Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Navarrete.
Here.
Councilmember Estatico. Vice Mayor Alonso.
Here.
And I am present. We do have a full quorum. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Tonight's work session is regarding the draft environmental impact statement, the EIS, of the USDA Forest Service has completed for the proposed resolution Copper Project Land Exchange. I want to be very clear on some ground rules around this special public hearing. It's not a public hearing, it's a council work session. This work session is going to help the council openly and transparently discuss our concerns and issues that the DEIS has brought to our attention so we can comment through the process. We encourage all of our residents to comment through the DEIS process, and you can go online to resolutionmineeis.us. You can also pick up these comment forms, and I think we have a few you can pick up, and you can mail your comments in. So the comment period is very important, and it closes on November 7th. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mr. Pryor, who's going to go in and explain everything to us. This is based on the research. He and other members of our staff have taken a tremendous amount of time to review the entire DEIS document. Council's had a reading guide, so now we're getting the synopsis. We're not, unless there is time available, we are not going to be taking public comments or public questions at this time. We do have some comment cards in the back. You're welcome to fill them out, and you may turn them into the clerk. If we have time at the end of this meeting, because we do have to end by 7 o'clock, then we will entertain some of those questions and we'll call them out by a number. So, Todd, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay. The draft EIS is not an easy document to get into. It is 1,400 pages of very dense data. Much of it is very repetitive. It talks a lot about the tailings piles, number one issue considered, and a good 1,000 pages of the document is mostly tailings piles. But there's a tailings pile alternate for every potential impact. Does the one tailings pile affect recreation more than the other? So it's very repetitive about those impacts for the different tailings locations. The public hearings are, there's a set of public hearings all around the Copper Corridor. Ours was 2 days ago for Superior. It was pretty well attended. There was, I believe, 110 people, something like that. And we are having our work session tonight. It's the second item on this list. We have to have this approved by October 10th, 2019. And this work session is to give the council a chance to review this document, to tell me what changes they would like to see, and what they would, things they would like added to the draft before the final. We have to approve it at the next council meeting, and it has to be submitted by November 7th. Another important thing to note about this is the no action alternative will be considered, but they cannot do it. They have to approve this permit. The legislation around this make it clear that they can consider other alternatives, they can discuss them, but they will not have the option of selecting that for the final permit. On these slides, where it has a note or a picture above, this is a direct quote from the document. I've taken a sheet from the document, turned it into a picture, and put it into this presentation. So you can see what I'm referring to in the text. The major issues that we have are the tailings. Where will they be placed? How much water is this going to draw from Coon Creek Is it going to have other groundwater effects, and what's the plan to make sure that doesn't affect the town? Socioeconomics, how much is this going to cost the town, and is there enough revenue coming in to offset that? Housing and lodging, if we have an influx of employees, where are they going to live? What's that going to do to property values, and how is it going to affect the homeowners in our community? Public safety, with the increased load and the traffic coming through our community, we're going to have increased call volume. What's going to be the effect on our public safety agencies? How are they going to have to increase staff? How are they going to have to change operational procedures to meet this demand? Traffic, there are a lot of traffic impacts listed in this report. Right, as of now, there's no impact, and there's no mitigation at all listed in the report for those traffic impacts. Recreation, the rec plan has been something that a lot of people have seen. It's been worked on for 2 years now. It involves a ton of people from a bunch of different agencies. We want to know how that will be paid for. Financial assurances. How many guarantees the mitigation will be paid for in this document? The first issue is tailings, of course. For the town, most of the document, again, is discussion of tailings. There's been a lot of discussion in the town as well about the different tailings locations. The near west, out at Hewitt Station Road, was definitely not attractive for our community and not liked. Silver King, in my mind, is even worse. It would have created a mountain that would be visible from our community and affect our viewshed. It would also have even more water impacts. So these. Can you hear me now? Does that help? Or do I need to turn up the mic?
Todd, you can borrow mine.
Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay. So viewshed is what we're going to be able to see from the town. Skunk Camp is listed in this report as the preferred alternative. Skunk Camp is in Dripping Springs. It is directly to the east of the Ray Pit. It is not visible from our community, or as far as I can tell, any other community. And in our mind, it is the best alternative. Kearney does not agree with that. Kearney does not like the idea. Winkleman doesn't like the idea. But for Superior, it is the best alternative. There's still more study to be done about this before the final report comes out. There's more geophysical stuff that has to be done about the Skunk Camp location. But the initial data says that it has the least seepage, it's the safest location, it is the one that affects the fewest number of impactable items. The mitigation for the tailings are the bonding attached to all of them. So there is a bond they submit that says that when they shut down, they go bankrupt, that those tailing facilities will be maintained, and that the water seepage will be monitored and mitigations will be done. These are really the only items in the report that have bonding attached. The rest of the mitigations we're going to talk about tonight do not. Water. As everyone's been aware over the past few months, the town's been very concerned about what this report says about water. We got early hints in March that it was going to affect the Clean Creek especially, but it was also going to affect the groundwater in our community to a much higher degree than we were initially told. The direct impacts are going to be an 18.6, I believe, 18-something% drop in the water that flows on the surface in the Clean Creek. This isn't going to happen immediately. It will happen when the subsidence crater begins to fracture through to the surface, and the water begins to flow. It would normally flow off that surface area. It begins to flow into the ground and is pumped out of the ground. The groundwater impacts, which is a decrease of somewhere between 10 and 30 feet, are due to primarily dewatering, and that dewatering operation has been going on for about 10 years now. So those effects are going to occur, and unless the pumps are turned off, the pumps are not going to be turned off. Even after the end of mine operations, the report projects that for the next 200 years, those effects will continue and even get worse, because it's going to continue to draw down from the Apache Tubbs, which is the large aquifer above the hill. The subsidence period itself fractures through all of the geological layers that have normally kept those aquifers separate, and allows it all to sink down to the bottom of the shaft, where it's pumped out. It affects Superior, the wells in town. Well, if you're suballuvial, which means if you're below the sands and into the bedrock, your well could go down from 10 to 30 feet. One of the things I have to be clear about these projections is they are guesstimates based on computer models, and the exact timing and the exact amounts are all essentially guesses. It's based on an average or impacts that were found in 84 different computer models. If they found an impact, they listed it in the report. There are a grand total, I believe, of 14 affected groundwater dependent ecosystems, which is a bunch of the springs that are around town. Many of those will see some impact. It doesn't say necessarily they'll dry up completely, but they could. The current plan primarily says that they will monitor that. If there's an impact, they'll drill a well a little ways away, and then we'll pump water back from the creek, or the ecosystem. The problem with that is the report also says that that will have permanent and irreversible effects, because if you put water, even if you replace the water, it's going to change the nature of that ecosystem. There's less surface water, perhaps. It flows in a different direction, and certain plants and animals will die off in one area, and more growth will occur elsewhere. So even if they are mitigated, it still is a permanent impact to those groundwater ecosystems. Each one of them is different. Some are groundwater, some are surface water. So each of them has to be analyzed differently. And the primary thing the engineers are telling us when they start talking about this is these are very difficult to fix. It's not like you can reverse those permanent impacts. So what was a spring with trees around it and reeds may in the future be a catch box with no growth around it that livestock gets out. And the report does have a lot of those sort of not one-for-one replacements, but partial mitigations. I would like to propose to the council that we ask for more of a proactive approach about the water mitigations. And an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If we begin recharging our local aquifers from the start, we set up procedures to return water to Queen Creek, and it recharges the local shallow aquifer, surface water aquifer, we may never see any effects in our riparian area. The Arboretum, we never see effects in their water flow. The report says they will lose 13% of their surface water, and they're fairly dependent on that water to keep that riparian area alive. 13% impact may in fact be quite severe when you're talking about such a huge water-dependent ecosystem. So if we begin by recharging that water at the start, then those impacts are never felt. We can use that opportunity to clean our creek out, to improve the watershed, to improve it visually, and improve it and improve its flow so that it decreases flood impacts, and that would be a net positive. Waiting until there is an impact is monitoring a well. You say it decreases in one well. They bring a drill rig in, they drill that well deeper, and now that well is filling again. That doesn't mean that the tree sitting next to that well isn't dead. And that's the impacts we want them to anticipate and mitigate right up front. The resolution has hired a new set of hydrologists who focus on this sort of riparian area restoration, and they are going to be working on a new plan. It is not going to be done in time for our comment period. So we'll need to comment on what we've already developed, which is the the National Park Service plan that we've been working on. And there's some maps on the wall, and the executive summary is included as well. That is only one component of a larger picture, but that is kind of how we envision how we could improve that area, at least in the area from Magma Bridge to Stone. We also have the 98 study that the town council commissioned to deal with the previous perception that the riparian area is already distressed due to the decrease of water flowing into the creek. It has some direct mitigations that we've pulled some of the ones out that we think are doable and not overly onerous to ask them to do, because they're fairly straightforward and inexpensive. We want them to return freshwater mining flow directly to the Creek. What happens now to the water that used to flow down the creek is at some time, I don't know when the shaft was put under the Queen Creek, but the Never Sweat was driven under the Queen Creek, and it fractured the entire creek bed. So now the water that used to flow on the surface goes down and comes out into the Never Sweat tunnel. That is somewhere between, the 98 report says that's 150 gallons per minute, never less than 40 gallons a minute. That flow is still there. Exactly how much it is still to be determined. That should be something the final report says. We'd like that in turn. There's also a quantification of the amount of water that will be lost due to subsidence rate. That's another 40 gallons per minute. So our contention should be that they need to return the base flow and lost flow to the Queen Creek for the subsidence. That would provide perhaps a 2-inch pipe running at decent pressure, or a 4-inch pipe running at almost no pressure of water into the creek on the upper reach. That's right above the Magma Bridge. That water would flow through this, on the surface to about the Stone area, and then go under the surface. Our work we've done with the National Park Service and with the hydrologists who helped us with that, one of whom's in the room, and helped us with some excellent ideas about suballuvial dams to retain that water in the watershed, so that it takes more, it slows it down, allows it to sink into the local aquifer, allows it to recharge that aquifer, and it increases the amount of, the frequency of water flow on the surface, because it will fill up behind that suballuvial dam, which is, if you dig a trench in the sand, and you fill up concrete. So it fills up behind the concrete, and then it flows over the top. All that water that's retained by there is recharging that aquifer and seeping that back out of the ground. We would like them to consider recharge concepts like this and add them to the plan. We would also like them to augment the natural flows with water from the dewatering operation. If the water flowing from out of the Never Sweat is only 40 gallons per minute, that's not enough, according to the 98 report, to keep the riparian area healthy. So the addition of more water would be required to keep it healthy, keep the water from becoming stagnant on the surface, keep it flowing in the bedrock areas, and to keep all the trees healthy and alive. We would like a vegetation program to remove the invasive species. If you walk our creek, you see a ton of oleander, tamarask, trees of heaven. Those all drink a lot of water and are non-native. So returning that riparian area to a more natural state would help it manage the water flow better, would manage the channel better, and it would look much more attractive. A more difficult ask is the addition of active recharge strategies to the individual seeps and springs. Those are very complex. They're all different. Some of them may have more complex methods we can do. Just rather than putting water in a catch box that the cattle come up and drink out of, we would prefer that they put it in a catch basin that recharges that local aquifer and allows the riparian area to survive, as well as provide water to the flora and fauna. Each of those, since every seep and spring is different, there would have to be a specific strategy developed for each one of them. If you look at the current mitigation plan, it is sort of a cut and paste strategy. You have a lot of things that have been done everywhere that don't require too much thought. We would like some more thought put into more riparian restoration and aquifer recharge. Additional items that could be considered, and some of these are adopted, are an alternative water supply for West Thompson Arboretum to avoid interruption of their water supply. They are very dependent on groundwater. If, say, the groundwater decreases into the Imerus pit, and they stop pumping the 170 acre-feet of water a year into that creek that they currently do, then they would lose a significant portion of the flow. So it may not just be surface water that affects the arboretum, it could be the groundwater depletion as well. And since it comes out of that pit at a variety of different levels, small decreases in pressure could affect the total flow fairly severely. We would like them to develop a secondary water source for the arboretum in case something was wrong. Right now, there is only a 2-inch main from Arizona Water. We would like them to put in a full-size main to service Arizona, to service the arboretum, and to provide the possible use of that water if their wells dry up. They don't want to hear if their wells dry up, it's going to take them 3 to 6 months to schedule and procure a driller to come and drill that. 3 to 6 months, how much of that riparian area will die? It's too much of a natural treasure to let that happen. Another item that was in the original 98 plan is a off-channel stormwater lake in the White Hills area. That was originally part in 2001. The town did actually have a grant to put that into place. And due to 9/11, we lost our funding and some political action, some political problems internally meant that it was never actually constructed. The intent was to have a stormwater lake there, 15 feet deep, that would retain 2 million gallons locally and allow it to slowly recharge the local aquifer. This is a larger ask and may not be practical with modern permitting, but it's something that should be at least studied. Another item that could be done is recharging the reclaimed water from the wastewater treatment plant higher in the creek, up at the US 64. We could not take all of that flow or even most of the flow from the wastewater treatment plant. It's too important downstream. But a small portion of it could be piped up to the US 64. And from there, it could be recharged into the ground. A well could be put 30 feet away to draw that water back out and pump into their stormwater lake in order to recharge the lake. If the lake is there, that might be the necessary step in order to make sure that lake stays full enough. Now down to the more complex issue and a little more daunting, socioeconomics. You can see highlighted from the report. Although Superior is by far the closest community to the proposed mine, the town is projected to receive a small share of this total tax revenues, less than $0.4 million per year in the near term. It does say it would increase later. We have had I have looked at those numbers, we've had some professionals look at those numbers, people who looked at the model used, and the consensus is that the projected numbers of revenue are very optimistic. They are based on a bunch of people moving to town and living in our community and spending their money and paying property tax and raising all boats by being in town. The problem is there's very little developable land in our town. There's a total available housing stock of something around 319 houses. They say in the near term, 150 people will move into those houses and fill those up. We end up with problems then when the housing stock becomes less available. We end up with problems with gentrification. We end up with problems with rising property values, which sounds great if you own a house. But it doesn't sound great if you own a house and you're on a fixed income and you're retired at your property tax goes up, insurance goes up because you can no longer, because your house that you want to live in the rest of your life has gone up by 50%. If you look at the report also, it has a fairly pie-in-the-sky number that was a little shocking to me when I first read it. If you look, it says $18 million to $30 million will go to our school district. I spoke to our school superintendent, who spoke to other school superintendents, who spoke to the county attorney, and that is a made-up number. We are never going to see that. The way funding works in Arizona is we're paid per student. Our amount per student may go up a little bit, But the most likely outcome is that the property tax rate for the school district will drop to nothing. It'll be extremely cheap to have the school district property tax. But the school isn't going to see an influx of cash in order to improve its services, unless a bunch of kids move to town. And where are they going to live? And are they going to move to town if we don't have any money invested in our school for it to be improved enough for them to draw into it? So it definitely is a huge challenge for us to look at these numbers and say, how are we going to make that work? Another issue there's a bunch of things that are listed as impacts, like the traffic impacts. I'll get more into those later. Again, housing, they say an estimated 455 new workers. It says elsewhere in the report 455 new households is the ultimate goal for them to move to our community. There are not 455 available houses. We will have to build out that housing stock. There is no available land to build on. PHP owns it all, or speculators. So there is no place for us to expand. There's also another problem with our housing right now. The Habitat for Humanity was going to come to our community and build 5 or 6 homes. They did the math. They determined that the resale price or value of that house was $125,000. And the cost of constructing it was $165,000. So they bailed and haven't come back. If someone is building homes for profit, that calculus is going to look even worse. So how are we going to attract people to build housing for all these new workers? If we don't, we've got no tax benefits, so we have the impact of the workers coming to our community, but none of the tax benefits of the living. Our comment letter, one of the things that I suggest we ask for is that all of the developable land currently owned by VHP is transferred to the town. They own 154 acres. Developable, we're probably only talking 50 or 60 acres. Most of it's the floodplain, or it's in the older part of town where everything's packed in together. But there are some developable spots that could be used to offset this impact. Public safety is a hugely alarming problem in this report. It says that our service population is going to increase by between 33 and 59%. That's the number of people that our police and fire are expected to provide service for. It says that our cost of providing that service will go up by 50%. It says that number is $375,000. When you actually do the math on what 50% of our emergency services is, it's $802,000. So this report has an error in it of $425,000. There are a number of reasons that happened. It seems to be 50% of the police budget, and that's it. It does not consider any funding from the ambulance because it's an enterprise fund, despite the fact that that ambulance does not generate a revenue surplus right now. And increasing the level of service, adding another crew, without the offsetting transport fees that recover it, would be extremely expensive. Just the ambulance increase would be $300,000 or $400,000. The reason that would be necessary is we have one ambulance in town. If it goes on a transport, there's 3 hours where we don't have an ambulance at all. If we increase our call volume, and they're gone 2 transports a day, that's 6 hours they're gone from the town. That means that the number of calls that they don't have coverage for would be huge. Right now it's about 30 a year, I believe, or what's that my tenure? It'd probably go closer to 100 calls, where we don't have somebody to cover that call. We would have no choice but to increase our staff to cover that gap. You can't leave it for a half hour to 45-minute transport just to get an ambulance here before we can even get them out of town. And if we don't have a reserve in town to cover, there's nobody even there to stabilize them to wait for the ambulance. We would have to increase our staff. Another impact that's listed in the report is traffic. It says that 3 intersections within the town of Superior, under the town's jurisdiction, would no longer meet VDOT standards. They would receive a level of traffic, or a level of something of F, the F-rated roads, level of service. And that would mean that we would have to implement traffic management plans for those intersections. It also includes our US 60 Main Street entrance, 177, Silver King and US 60, all of which are ADOT controlled. Again, this report has no plan in there at all for traffic. It just says the town's responsibility and we have to do it. A rough estimate of how much that will cost us is $250,000 a year. One of the things that may be absolutely required, because the traffic is so high at the Main and Magdalene intersection in this report, is we may have to put the stoplight in the back. That's $250,000 to $500,000. And $10,000 a year to maintain. Again, no money in this report to pay for it. Recreation. We all like the recreational review plan. It's an excellent plan. It includes, for the loss of Oak Flat, which is a beautiful and iconic location, there was and for the loss of economic growth and for the loss of the view shed for the town of Superior, which is going to be industrialized by the move into this new plant, we were given a trail system that is to extend this out of town in this report. The problem with that is it does not include direct funding and resolution. It says that it will be funded by a local nonprofit with resolution and federal grants and other sources as possible funding sources. Possible funding sources. It's not bonded, it's not guaranteed. It is a promise. Again, a lot of these things do not have funding assurances attached. What they do say is, if it's included in the final record of decision, the forestry has the ability to require it as part of the permit. But there's no real guarantee exactly what that is. And they haven't quantified exactly how much it's going to cost for them. How much is it going to cost for this trail system? Is it $3 million? Are they going to provide $1 million? How much is it going to cost a year to maintain it? Have they put that in a fund somewhere so that we're sure, even when they shut down and go away, we can continue? That's one of the core issues of the entire report. The financial assurances in this thing are very lacking. We would like them to consider the possibility of running up a foundation with a fund in it sufficient so that the interest maintains all these mitigations in perpetuity. Most of these impacts that they list in this report are listed as permanent, even if mining operations stop. So once they put the subsidence grader, even if they shut down the day after they do that, that water is going to continue to decrease for the next 200 years. And if they don't, and even if they stop mining or they don't do the subsidence grader, the pumps are not going to be turned on. So the dewatering impact will continue no matter what. So we need to have mitigation methods that are independent of the financial status of resolution time. We've all lived in the mining world for a very long time. We all know that mining companies come and go. The Ray Pit has been profitable for its entire lifetime. The companies that have owned it have gone broke 5 times. Just because a property makes sense doesn't mean that corporate overrewards make the same amount of sense. They will say it's healthy. We need to have some basic assurance. We want a updated cost-benefit research and analysis. We want them to bring in a new set of consultants to look at this obviously damaged financial model they used to calculate the impact to our community. We want them to address some of our questions and make sure that all of the issues are addressed and that the mitigations are funded. Again, the core problem with this whole thing is there's no assured funding for this if anything happens to resolution. It just says it's required in their permit. If they don't activate their permit, they let their permit sit and pause, they may never do it. And there's also no timetables associated with most of these things. The traffic impacts, for instance, happen most severely during construction. That's when they're bringing in tons of heavy trucks, carrying tons of heavy equipment, they're driving up our main street, turning left at Orange Gate, and slowing our traffic down. Slowing our traffic down at the US 60 intersection of Main Street. What are the impacts then? What are the economic impacts? What's the impact on our streets? What sort of traffic management is necessary to install in that location to make sure it doesn't have those impacts? And none of that is planned out in this report at all. There's huge gaps in mitigation. If you start reading the J section of the report, it lists a lot of impacts that are quantified in the report. There's no mitigation attached at all. this needs to be addressed. Impact noted, there needs to be some sort of mitigation plan. And not just saying it's the town's responsibility to come up with the money to do it. If you do the math on all these impacts, our total, and the worst case is that we run with a $400,000 per year, or $900,000 per year shortfall. Best case is a $400,000 per year shortfall. And the town does not have any revenue to make up that shortfall. And that's including all of the revenue projections they've given us in this report. Getting to $695,000, we still would have a $400,000 shortfall. And that's all I've got to present to you tonight. I have given you the comment card, or the comment memo. It's marked as draft. Again, it's not final until the council tells me it's final. It has all the items I listed in this report. I've also added, and for the public as well, I've also added some of the analysis I've done, and Iowa Worldwide has done, to see where we're ending up with our numbers.
So at this time, council, we can open the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Pryor. I think your analysis and all the tremendous amount of work that you put into this has been very important. Council, this is our time to discuss. As you know, we cannot send a comment letter unless it's approved by the council. We did not put that on the agenda tonight because there's still additional data that we are trying to gather on this, especially on the socioeconomics. Some of that data came to light late last week on Thursday, especially around public safety. So we needed a little bit more time to really refine all of those comments, but we need to know, is staff going in the right direction? Do we need to focus on some other areas, or there's some things you want us to research a little bit more? But we do need to get our comment letter approved at our October meeting so we can meet the appropriate deadlines. So the floor is open to the council.
I'd just like to say I appreciate all the work that the staff has done so far. Oh, that's not, isn't it?
You maybe can turn it down a little bit now that I'm not the only one talking.
Yeah. I went to the high school the other night, listened to a lot of the comments from the public regarding the DEIS. I would not be surprised in the least to see an extension come out, even though I know that it's normally just a 30-day period and they've given us 90 days. I wouldn't be surprised to see it extended from at least 30 to maybe 60 days. I suggest we not submit our comments until the last possible moment, just in case something should come up. Perhaps, you know, I would even be willing to look at maybe a special meeting somewhere down the road if we need it to sit down and approve what comes out. Because I have a feeling that we're going to have a lot more. I wouldn't be surprised to see your work almost at least increase maybe another 25% comments or greater. So I say let's don't be in too much of a hurry, but let's continue with the due diligence. I'm very happy to see that you're really all over this in areas that I barely understand. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I don't know a lot about the technicalities of it. So let's don't get in a hurry. Let's listen to what everybody has to say, because I'm sure that the community, you know, wants to make some comments too, and perhaps hopefully other options will come out, other ideas will come out. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Let's don't get in a hurry, and I would almost bet money that they're going to add another 30 or 60 days on that comment period. So.
And thank you for that point, Councilmember Armitage. I will. I think we're all pretty familiar with some of these processes that they do expand the comment period. One of the realities behind this particular process is we're already starting to meet with agency conveners regarding this particular document. So yesterday we met with the Army Corps of Engineers and we met with the EPA because they were here on a tour with Resolution around the water mitigations. And so it's really important that we we stay on top of this and don't let a lot of time linger, because we have to have comments. Like when we were talking to the EPA, they were concerned that when they were at the hearing on Tuesday, they didn't have an official comment from the town of Superior. They didn't have an official comment for us. And so we do have some preference, because we need to start meeting with agency representatives like the Forest Service, like the EPA, the Army Corps. So even though we expect that, we still need to get our comments in. We can always send in additional comments, but there is a strategy behind making sure we stay very present in this process, because there is a feeling that while they could extend the comment period, there is no guarantee.
Right, I understand.
And so I'm a little leery to get too relaxed and saying, let's push it out, so we're putting this in the mail November 6th, when we have a lot of relationship building to make and make sure that we're on the same page going forward. I think we've been doing a good job, staff especially sending in updates as we're finding things and working with our consultants. But, you know, there's a lot of timelines that time's gonna go by quickly anyway. So I think it's just one thing to keep in mind.
Right, I agree, we need to be prepared for the timeline that's set for it right now, but let's just don't be surprised if it does get extended, and maybe have a plan of action for that too.
Yeah, and I think staff's been very much aware that if we do encounter other issues, or as we bring on our legislative support team, and they're like, hey, we need to make some more comment to this or whatever, then we have that. So, you know, there's always going to be time, and I think what's been very positive is that the Forest Service has really opened the doors to make sure they're staying in contact with us, and that has not been the status of our relationship prior to. So that's very big. Mr. Pryor.
Two things I would say is, resolution has acknowledged that some of these numbers in the report may take a second look. They are bringing in consultants to assist with that. There's going to be a lot of meetings over the next month or so to try to refine that. Hopefully by our next meeting, I'll have at least a read at what direction that's going. Those things will not develop in time for us to put in our comment letter, most likely. Again, I feel very positive about the fact that they are willing to talk to us, and they are acknowledging that some of these assumptions are probably not accurate. And resolution does not prepare this report; consultants do, and they have some input into it, but the model for the economic issues and the water were probably as much a surprise to them as they were to us. The other thing I would say is we have been told that if this process is extended, it could extend into the next election cycle and politicize the entire thing. And there may be some pushback from agencies involved that they don't want that to happen, and then the extension may never happen.
That's great information.
Todd, first of all, I want to thank you for the work that you've done on this. Really appreciate it. Second of all, I didn't hear you, or I didn't see and hear anything about Bronco Creek. Is that meant to happen? Is that going to be addressed in our letter? And does it need to be addressed in our letter?
We have commented separately on the Bronco Creek permit itself. That doesn't really have bearing on the land exchange. The Bronco Creek issue primarily affects the land exchange, and we probably should add a comment to that in here. And my problem with it so far is finding a solution for it. And Bronco Creek is unwilling to sell their claims, and the fact that those claims exist means that the land exchange properties are essentially valueless to us. So it's a catch-22, and I don't know how to get out of it. We do need to put a comment in there saying that something needs to be done. I just don't know what the solution is.
Okay. And in my second comment, I agree with some type of foundation. I don't see any other way of, I heard Mr. Cooper say at one time, a revenue stream, when they make money, we make money, but I don't know if that's the way to go, but I do think some type of foundation that benefits all Superior and its organization would be the best idea at this point.
Well, one of the problems with the revenue stream when they make money, when we make money, is that they won't make money till the middle or end of next decade.
Sure.
And most of their impacts are right up front when the construction starts. So it's, that model may have more long-term merit, but in the short term, it would bankrupt.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
I do have a question. In the land exchange, it talks about certain areas that would transfer to the town if the town requests this. So can you elaborate on that?
Yes, the legislation says that they will transfer those properties. It says the airport and all untransferred reversionary and mineral and other rights. And then it says the contiguous properties as well. So, and the cemetery. So we have the ability to purchase those properties from the federal government. In order to activate that process, we have to request resolution to provide us a federal appraisal. Once we get that appraisal is usually only good for a year or two. And that time, we have to come up with enough money to purchase those properties. So that is estimated in the range of $10,000 to $12,000 an acre. So about $5 million for this purchase, $5 to $6 million. We don't have that money. And we can only ask for the appraisal once. The appraisal is $75,000. So we want to put it off until we're ready to actually do something with those properties. Because we can't do anything with them because they have mineral claims underneath them. We're not in any rush to do that. The legislation does not have any timeline. It doesn't say that we have 2 years to do this or anything else. It just says we have the right to purchase those properties.
Yeah, this is not clear because it says this land will transfer, well, that's not entirely true because we have to purchase.
Yes, and that's another vagueness in the report that is inaccurate and doesn't represent the economic impact of the town. How are we going to come up with $6 million?
And may I also ask, I mean, obviously a lot of work was put into the presentation of the draft letter. May I ask like what consultants you worked with, like, who helped? I would assume you're not an expertise in all of these areas, Todd, but I may be wrong.
Anyone of our festas with Iowa Worldwide and Woodroad's career was extremely useful. She provided her own supporting documentation. I did run my numbers by a lot of people, but that is pretty much my document. I wrote everything in there. That's why I'm very clear when I tell people that that it is based on my knowledge and my experience, and I'm not an economic development profession. And it needs more study to be sure if these numbers are correct and accurate.
So I'm talking about like even in the water mitigation.
Water mitigations are directly pulled from the 98 study, most of them, and a few of them are pulled from the National Park Service grant that we're currently, and study we're currently working.
Council, anything else? Questions, comments, direction? It's 10 minutes till, and again, I want to thank our staff and everyone on our team that's been helping us and guiding us. In our business agenda tonight, we will be approving a contract at council's approval to hire Nexus Consulting to help us carry this message forward across through DC and help us navigate the waters around this particular complex situation. For those that were at the hearing on Tuesday, I believe we heard from our friend Wensler Nosey, who talked about the importance of having our own advocacy and our own voice on these particular situations. So that comes up later in our business agenda. So this strategy is going to be long-term. We have another opportunity in which to talk. I don't have a lot of time here. I have 6:50 at 6:50. I'm going to go through these lists here, but I don't want, you can leave a question Did they write their questions in already, or just a attendance?
Anyone who has, and doesn't have an opportunity to comment, please do write your comment.
Okay, Anthony has them?
You have the right one?
Okay, Anthony, will you bring them up for me, please? And I will read through them. I will go, oh, there's nothing on them. Okay, I thought there was,
No, there's only one that's been handed to us.
okay.
1 through 11, you can randomly select. them.
Anybody want one for a
Okay.
comment? Nobody?
Okay. Well, with this being said, we have 2 comments. And I think before I get into reading these really, I want to make sure that the public knows. There's nothing in this legislation that stops this project, as Mr. Pryor explained. The forester does not have the will or the authority to say, no, do not open this project. So we have to keep that in mind. And number 1, this particular hearing is not on to create your public hearing, your comments on the draft EIS. It is to communicate to us and hear what the concerns are directly affecting Superior. So I think what I'd rather use this minute for is to really go over the process if you're going to make comments. And I think the best thing to do is to encourage everyone to go into the Resolution Mind EIS.us website. And then, Mr. Gunn, we will add your comment to the record, because his comment is, I'll just read it. My name is David Gunn. I live in Superior. I appreciate the opportunity to hear what you are considering with the draft EIS of the Resolution Copper Project and Land Exchange. Hearing staff's concerns eases the onerous task of reviewing the entire document on my own. You have pretty good handwriting, so thank you. I speak to you tonight to bring forth a world of caution. I encourage you to determine the impacts on our town independent from USFS. Mostly, I'd like to see the town determine mine additional costs incurred as a result of this project, from increase of fire and police staff, increase of infrastructure, roads, sewer, power, water, etc., and its estimated tax revenues increases will offset these costs. Do this research yourself. Demand that you remain whole as a result of this project. Anything less is unacceptable. And we appreciate that, and that's really what this hearing is about, and trying to make sure that we are looking out for ourselves. This is our time, and this was the moment that we've all been waiting for in regards to the data. And this was the point we were waiting for. The draft EIS was bringing out data and important critical points so we can make educated assessments of what we need to do to go forward. And I think we have a pretty successful track record in developing compromise and the connection with the mine to make sure that things happen correctly. So with that, Mr. Herrera, your comment was
Well, I had it written out. I just thought
water loss to the air resolution.
I have it written out, and I have enough to get to it.
Okay, why don't you just hand your comments into Ruby and we'll add it to the record, because I think that would just be easier at this time. It's 6:54, and I'd like to give council a little bit of a break in between meetings because we have a full agenda at 7 o'clock. So with that being said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? I'll second. Second by Councilmember Lopez. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.